is not only a physical attack, but also a mental war. Anti-Semitism tries to hurt, to damage, physically and mentally. Yes, the gas chambers of Auschwitz killed more than 85% of my family. But before killing, there was the mortification. Human beings were reduced to numbers. It's of huge importance to keep strong, refuse to give in to any kind of threat, physical and spiritual. I refuse to change my Jewish-looking black hat or kippah for a baseball cap. And when Premier Netanyahu called upon France Jewry to leave France and to make Aliyah to Israel, a journalist suddenly pushed his microphone in front of me. Rabbi, do you agree with Netanyahu that Jewish people should leave Europe? My answer was a very strong yes and a very strong no. Yes, my parents, survivors of the war, of the Holocaust, did not have a place where to go. And I, if needed, could, thanks God, I could go to Israel. But if and when I will or won't go, will be decided by me myself, and not by fear for terror. But what was exactly the subject I was asked to talk about? The subject of this speech? Am I requested to give my opinion about how to deal with anti-Semitism? Am I supposed to give my opinion about the discussion if there's new anti-Semitism, or if anti-Semitism never disappeared, but just till now was not visible? Do I have to give an estimation how to fight anti-Semitism? Or do I have to give a wake-up call to those Jews who believe that anti-Semitism is only in the mind of the Jews and really isn't so bad? Or do I have to warn my fellow Jews that you shouldn't see behind each and every tree an anti-Semite and consider each Gentile as an enemy? In my country, the Netherlands, the highest percentage of Jews in civilized Western Europe were killed. Yes. In my country, it was, thanks God, only a small percentage of Dutch which did collaborate with the Nazis. But be aware, it was also a very small percentage that was prepared to fight them. The majority saw it happen and let it happen. 102,000 out of 140 Dutch Jews were killed. And many of those who managed to survive suffered till the last day on this earth. I was brought up as a child of Holocaust survivors who is before the war and after the war. I had to learn how to play violin because Uncle Joseph, who was a partisan and executed in the prison, also played violin. And when I was a little boy, both my parents used to tell me, don't worry, this will never, ever happen again. But when I was about 14, my father advised me to make sure to have always 8,000 gulden in the house, just in case. And shortly before my father passed away, he told me very clearly, dear son, don't fool yourself. Be aware, it could happen again. The most Dutch Jews being integrated in Dutch society For example, my family, more than 10 generations Dutch, believed it could happen in Poland, in Germany, but not in Holland because we are Dutch. But it did happen. Yes, Dutch government is not at all anti-Semitic. We can't compare it with Nazi Germany at all. But like a high German politician once told me, we will give the Jews all the required protection. But we can't predict who will be next government. Don't forget, that's what he told me. Hitler was chosen democratically. Today, my private house is surrounded with police cameras. I'm very thankful to the police who make sure nothing will happen to me. They are just great. A few weeks ago, in the middle of the night, I came home. It was dark, 2 o'clock, middle of the night. Straightway police saw it's me, helped me unpacking my car, and continued. Both our Jewish schools are surrounded with a huge fence, like a prison for top criminals. And soldiers are making sure during lessons that my children and grandchildren are able to attend the school without danger. My parents had the wrong race. They weren't Aryans. And my problem is that I'm Jewish and therefore I'm Zionist, and Zionism and Judaism and Israel is all the same. The refugees are the problems today, the Islam. But during the war, the years 1940, 1945 in Holland, there was no Islam at all. It's good. The Jewish events and buildings receive extra security, and I'm grateful that Dutch government is caring about my safety. I realize that my children and grandchildren never visit school without police protection, which is absolutely impressive. But at the same time, isn't it ridiculous and in fact unacceptable that this is needed 75 years after Auschwitz liberation? And therefore, dear friends, I'm puzzled. Was or is Auschwitz really liberated?
That's a very powerful question to end on, Chief Rabbi. It's my pleasure and honor now to invite our next speaker, Senator André Gattolin, to address this symposium. Merci et bienvenue, Sénateur.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Chairman. Distinguished ministers, excellencies, dear parliamentarian colleagues, dear rabbis, dear ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and members of the European Jewish Association for the invitation. I'm very honored to having the opportunity to give this speech here in Krakow. I would also like to congratulate my friend, now my old friend, David Kalfa, who has always helped us parliamentarians to organize meetings and debates on topics related to the duty of remembrance of the Holocaust by providing us with information, accurate context, and his personal presence. It's important because we never speak of people who organize a thing on the backyard. As you certainly heard and understood immediately, I'm French. I've been a French senator for 9 years, and first of all, I would like to ask you to please forgive my rather poor English. I'm not very comfortable expressing myself in this language, and I hope you will understand me, even though my vocabulary might sometimes be somewhat approximative. Tomorrow, will be my first time in Auschwitz and Birkenau. And I'm very grateful to the event planners that they did not schedule this speech after the visit. Indeed, I remember the first time I came to Yad Vashem many years ago. After we exited the Holocaust Memorial, I was, like my friend, completely unable to say a word for more than an hour. And for a politician not being able to speak, especially me, I'm very talkative, you know, it's something, it means something. Today, in this short speech, I will be focusing on the situation of anti-Semitism in France. Unfortunately, I must tell you that the situation is neither something to be joyful about, nor something to be proud of. It's worth noting that French authorities are attentive and vigilant when it comes to this question. And France, after two long decades of denial, is now fully recognizing its responsibility in the deportation of Jews, as well as the anti-Semitic law passed during the last World War by the so-called French state. It is important. Here we must remember the courageous speech by President Chirac in July 1995, and the very strong commitments President Macron made last year to the Jewish community of France. He specifically took a stand against anti-Zionism as a new form of anti-Semitism and hate speech. And yet, despite this, we are shocked to observe that over the past year, there has been a very dismaying increase of deliberated acts of anti-Semitism in France. In 2017, the French Home Office has recorded a 74% increase in this act and more than 500 incidents. In 2019, last year, there were more than 50 incidents only in the Alsace region, you know, the East region of France. Village walls and cemeteries were desecrated with hate symbols and hateful messages. This despicable act are, in the case of the Alsace region, largely connected to far-right groups and individuals. Let me be more precise. François Croquette, very nice person, is a French ambassador at large for human rights in charge of Holocaust issues, told me last week that the analysis of a large number of these close case of anti-Semitism act in Alsace shows that they are mostly related to far-right activists, 90% of this case. These activists, through the inquiry done, are often connected with some German group sharing the same neo-Nazi ideology. These anti-Semitic acts, unfortunately, are not only one part of the problem. It is clear that the current social tensions are not helping. For instance, last year, I think that everybody remembered that in France, we were all shocked to see Alain Finkielkraut, a notable philosopher and intellectual, get harassed and insulted during one of the first demonstrations of the movement of the Gilets jaunes. The incident illustrates how the trend of violence is also accompanied by a kind of rhetoric that turns religious discrimination into something personal and political. Nowadays, anti-Semitism takes its root in different grounds and has many different forms. The revival of some traditional far-right movement, far-left violent activists, the radical Islamist community, and stupid young individual, and sometimes less young, but also stupid people propagating anonymous hate on social networks are all part of the problem. Yesterday morning, I was in my constituency, not far from Paris, and I met Yves Azeroual, a very brave and talented filmmaker. And I do and must highly recommend his very powerful documentary called L'islamo-gauchisme, la trahison du rêve européen, Islamic leftism and the betrayal of the European dream. It illustrates the highly threatening crossover between various political and ideological groups in France that is nourishing the current development of anti-Semitism in my country. Today in France, anti-Semitic speech, acts, and propaganda are spilling over from the both political extreme, right and left, and reaching mainstream politics. So this spillover was enabled by rising tensions in a social context that has been very fragile for quite some time. Indeed, more than a year of nearly continuous demonstration, rallies, and strikes has enabled an extremist behavior, and the extremists in general have found a change to express themselves. As a result, though these events are apparently isolated, it is vital that we take them very, very seriously, and we are. Our competent authorities and President Macron himself are very vigilant about that. Finally, the fight against this new kind of anti-Semitism will also require legal tools to combat the dangerous crossovers from different extremist groups. I think, in this regard, that the draft legislative text that was sent to us should be endorsed by all my colleagues who are attending to this event today. This is not a matter of right or left. As a Republican, I could only agree with this important, very important initiative that we all know today. We are and I am personally determined to keep on working towards this end. Hate and intolerance have no place in our society. Be it in France or in Europe, rest assured, we will not look away. I would like to thank you for your kindly attention.
Big thank you, Senator. And last but not least on this panel, once again, it's our honor to have with us Keren Knoll, whose grandmother, Mireille, of blessed memory, was murdered in March 2018 in her flat in Paris in what was an anti-Semitic hate crime. Her grandmother being a Holocaust survivor and indeed married to a survivor from the camp, which we're going to be visiting tomorrow. Keren, it's my honor to welcome you and to share your thoughts with our symposium. Thank you for being here.
Here we are, on this land. Tomorrow, we'll walk through the gates of hell. The gate still exists. It calls hate. And we are here today to fight it with light. Last year, I was here in my army uniform as a captain in the IDF. After 10 years of military service, I walked through the March of Living on my last day. I walked through the steps of my grandfather. My grandfather was 14 years old when he was arrested and sent to Birkenau camp. As you can see, he was handsome. He was tall. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, and he was funny. And for some reason, the Nazis liked him, and he stayed alive. He was released at 18 and weighed 45 kilos. And my grandmother, she was about 8 when a classmate of her called her a dirty Jew. She was deeply offended to be called dirty. I mean, look at her. But Jew, she had no idea what that meant. My grandmother survived the Holocaust thanks to her father's Brazilian passport. They escaped France to Portugal, Brazil, Canada, and came back to France. I was 7 when my mother told my nanny that her services are no longer needed because we are making Aliyah to Israel. My Polish nanny was 23 when she realized that she was living with a Jewish family. And she kept asking my mother, how is it possible that we are normal if we are Jewish? Because she grew up knowing that Jewish people have tails and big teeth. Coming out of the Holocaust, you might think that we turn a page in history, that we are better people, that we live in a better world. But Judophobia did not end with the war. Judophobia is alive and being fed by lies and hate every single day. By people who've been raised believing that their blood or religion are better than others. Today, there are people walking among us that think they have the right to decide who should live or die. My grandmother was 85 years old when she was murdered by a Muslim neighbor who yelled, Allahu Akbar. My grandmother was stabbed 11 times before she was set on fire and burned. My grandmother survived the Holocaust, but was still murdered for being Jewish.
Beaucoup de chance.
Valeur niée par le terroriste de Trèbes. Valeur niée par le meurtrier de Mireille Knoll, qui a assassiné une femme innocente et vulnérable parce qu'elle était juive, et qui ainsi a profané nos valeurs sacrées et notre mémoire.
I told my speech with numbers, because at the end of the day, that's all we are, numbers. 6 million. One grandma. She was mine, but apparently in France, if you are French and Jewish, she might have been yours. 71 years, Israel is standing as a strong, independent, growing country with an army, the strongest in the world, they say, to protect it. So never again Jews will be killed only for being Jewish. I am here today to tell my story to you, to all of you, to the whole world, so you know that this is not over. Fight is very much alive. Hate is still very much alive. But there's things we can do. Find people who can listen. Share your message with them. Make sure they understand. Remember my grandmother. Remember that after all we've been through and all the horrible things that are going on, we still have hope. We still want to move forward. So here we are, on this land, making this world a better, more tolerant, more accepting, more human place together.